They called him too nice to be a champion. They said he lacked the killer instinct. They wrote headlines mocking him after the worst playoff loss of his career. Sports analysts across the country sat behind microphones and told millions of viewers that David Robinson, the MVP of the entire NBA, simply did not have what it took to win when it mattered most. And here is the part that will blow your mind. They said all of that while Robinson was quietly preparing to prove every single one of them dead wrong. But this story is not what you think it is. This is not just another rise to the top sports documentary. This is the story of a man who was told he was too tall to serve in the Navy, too kind to win a championship, and too broken by injuries to ever come back. A man who sat in a military uniform watching other rookies build their NBA careers while he waited in silence. A man who, at the peak of his individual glory, was publicly humiliated in the playoffs and had that humiliation replayed on national television for years. This is the story of the real David Robinson, the parts they never put in the highlight reels. And once you hear it, you will never look at greatness the same way again. Picture a boy in Florida in 1965. His father is a Navy officer. The family moves constantly, base to base, city to city. New schools, new faces, new goodbyes, over and over again. This boy never really belongs anywhere. He is awkward, lanky, growing faster than his own body can adjust to. In gym class, he is the clumsy one. Nobody looks at him and sees a future NBA legend. His teachers see a smart kid who is good at math and science. His classmates see the tallest and most out-of-place person in the room. Basketball is not even his dream yet. He has no dream yet, only the quiet feeling of not fitting in anywhere. That boy grows into his teenage years, still searching for a place to belong. His height becomes almost freakish, shooting upward month after month, year after year, until he towers over everyone around him. But height without confidence is just awkwardness in a bigger body. Robinson is still unsure of himself, still finding his footing, literally and figuratively. Nobody at that school, not a single teacher or coach or classmate, predicts that this shy, overgrown, math-loving kid will one day stand at the center of the most important basketball games in American history. That is the first shocking truth about David Robinson. Greatness does not announce itself. It hides in the most unlikely places, and it waits. In 1983, Robinson makes a decision that surprises almost everyone around him. He does not chase a basketball scholarship. He applies to the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, one of the most prestigious and demanding military institutions in the country. His father is a Navy man. Discipline, honor, and duty are not abstract ideas in Robinson's house. They are the air he breathes. So Robinson walks into the Naval Academy not as a basketball star, but as a young man who genuinely believes in service. Basketball is something he plays. It is not yet something he lives for, but his body has other plans. Inside the walls of the Naval Academy, Robinson continues to grow. Not a few inches. We are talking about an almost unbelievable physical transformation. He goes from 6'10" to nearly 7 feet tall. And here is where the story takes its first truly shocking turn. The United States Navy has very specific height regulations for officers who serve aboard warships. The corridors are narrow. The engine rooms are cramped. The control systems are built for people of average height. David Robinson, at nearly 7 feet tall, was becoming physically too large to serve on a ship. The military institution that shaped him, the path he had chosen over basketball, the future he had worked toward, was beginning to close in front of him. Not because he failed, not because he quit, but because his body kept growing. Think about that for a moment. He gave up the spotlight of college basketball recruiting to serve his country. He chose honor over fame. And the reward for that choice was the very real possibility that his military career would be over before it started. Robinson found himself caught between two worlds. He could not leave the Naval Academy to go play professional basketball because of his service obligation. And he could not serve aboard ships the way he had planned because of his height. So he waited. And in that waiting, something began to change on the basketball court of the Naval Academy. Robinson started playing with a ferocity that nobody expected. His long arms became weapons. His explosive jumps defied logic for a man that size. He could block shots in a way that made coaches and scouts rub their eyes in disbelief. The same awkward teenager who could barely play in high school gym class was now dominating college basketball in a military uniform. Scouts started appearing in the stands at Naval Academy games. They took notes. They whispered to each other, because what they were watching was not normal. A nearly 7-foot center who moved like a guard, blocked like a wall, and played with the composure of someone who had nothing to prove. That composure came from the military. It came from rising before dawn, from following orders under pressure, from being told that ego is a liability and discipline is a weapon. By the time Robinson finished his college career, he had become one of the most talked about players in the country. The 1987 NBA draft arrived. Teams had been planning for this moment for years. And when draft night came, the San Antonio Spurs selected David Robinson with the very first pick. Number 1 overall. In a draft full of talented players, Robinson was the unanimous top choice. It was a moment millions of young athletes dream about. Your name called first. The whole world watching. The beginning of everything. Except it was not the beginning. Not yet. Because Robinson could not play. He had military obligations to fulfill. His service to the United States Navy was not negotiable. While other rookies from that draft class stepped onto NBA courts, signed endorsement deals, and started building their professional careers, Robinson put on his uniform and reported for duty. 2 years. 2 entire years of watching the NBA move forward without him. 2 years of working logistics at naval bases, while teams in the league adjusted their strategies around the idea that one day Robinson would finally arrive. Spurs fans clung to that idea like it was a life raft. Their team was terrible without him. They won only 21 games in the 1988 to 1989 season. The stands were barely half full. The organization was in crisis. And their only hope was a man in a military uniform who could not even pick up a basketball in a professional context. Robinson has spoken about those 2 years in ways that reveal how much they cost him emotionally. He sat with that silence. He watched other players develop, improve, and establish themselves. He wondered sometimes whether his moment would pass before he ever got to live it. He knew professional basketball was a ruthless world where opportunities expire fast. There were nights when the weight of waiting felt heavier than any physical training he had ever done. But Robinson did not break. He did not complain publicly. He fulfilled his obligation because that is who he was. He believed in promises. He believed that integrity is not something you set aside when a better option appears. When Robinson finally stepped onto an NBA court in the 1989 to 1990 season, the city of San Antonio did not breathe for weeks. He was not just a new player. He was the answer to years of suffering. And from his very first games, Robinson delivered in a way that shocked the entire league. The Spurs had won only 21 games the previous season. With Robinson, they won 56. That is one of the single largest single-season turnarounds in NBA history. He averaged more than 24 points per game, more than 12 rebounds, and nearly 4 blocks. He was named Rookie of the Year. He was selected to the All-Star game. He was everything the Spurs had hoped for and more. But the pressure that came with that transformation was something most people never fully understood. San Antonio did not just love Robinson. They needed him. Every win was his. And more dangerously, every loss was his too. The team was still being built around him. The supporting cast was not complete. Robinson was carrying the entire franchise on a frame that, while extraordinary, was still just one man. He was expected to score, defend, rebound, lead, inspire, and win championships. All of it, at the same time, every night. And when the Spurs fell short in the playoffs, the questions started coming. Quietly at first, then louder, then everywhere. Why can Robinson not win a championship? Why does this team always fall apart when the games matter most? And then the phrase that would follow him for years. Robinson is too nice to be a champion. Those 5 words. Too nice to be a champion. They spread through sports television, through newspaper columns, through radio call-in shows. Robinson was polite. He never talked trash. He signed autographs for fans after losses. He spoke respectfully about opponents. In an era defined by the ruthless competitiveness of Michael Jordan, the trash-talking edge of Larry Bird, the fierce intensity of Charles Barkley, Robinson stood apart. And in the eyes of many analysts, standing apart from that kind of aggression meant standing apart from greatness. Robinson heard those words. He read those columns. And he said almost nothing in response, which, in the twisted logic of sports media, was treated as more evidence that the criticism was correct. Because a true champion, they argued, would have snapped back, would have used the disrespect as fuel, and let the world know it. Robinson instead kept training, kept playing, kept being exactly who he was. And inside, he was fighting a war that nobody could see. Then came 1995, the season that looked like it would finally silence all the critics. Robinson played the best basketball of his life that year. He averaged more than 27 points per game, along with nearly 11 rebounds and more than 3 blocks per game. He led the Spurs to one of their best regular season records. He dominated opposing centers every single night. And at the end of the season, he received the NBA Most Valuable Player award, the best player in the entire league. In a season where Michael Jordan was still retired and the landscape was wide open, Robinson was the best basketball player on earth, officially. The criticism was supposed to be over. It was not over. It was just getting started. Because the Western Conference Finals that year matched Robinson and the Spurs against the Houston Rockets and their center, Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem was not just an excellent player. He was perhaps the most technically gifted center in basketball history. His footwork was a graduate-level course in deception. The dream shake, a spinning move that left defenders frozen while the ball went through the net, was something almost no one on earth could stop. And in that playoff series, Hakeem put on a performance that became one of the most talked-about individual efforts in NBA history. Game after game, Hakeem scored. He spun past Robinson. He used fakes that made the MVP look helpless. He scored more than 40 points in multiple games. The Spurs collapsed. The series ended with Houston advancing to the finals, where they eventually won the championship. And the story the national media told was brutal. The season MVP had been systematically destroyed by a superior opponent. Highlight reels showed every Hakeem spin, every dream shake, every moment Robinson was left standing while the ball went in. Sports commentators played those clips in slow motion. They analyzed Robinson's positioning, his footwork, his reaction time. And then they used what they saw to deliver a verdict that landed like a hammer. The headline that followed Robinson for years after that series read, "The MVP who disappears when it matters most." That was not a comment on one bad game. That was a branding of failure. That was a label placed on a man's entire legacy. Robinson was the league's best player and the league's biggest disappointment in the same breath. And he had to carry both of those things simultaneously. He had to go to practice knowing that the media had decided the story of his career. He had to prepare for the next season, knowing that no regular season performance would ever fully erase the image of Hakeem Olajuwon, making him look ordinary. Then came the injury. Not one injury. Several. Starting in the 1996 to 1997 season, Robinson's body began to break down in ways that felt almost deliberate, as if the universe wanted to test exactly how much he could endure. First, a broken foot, devastating for any athlete, catastrophic for a 7-foot center whose entire game depends on explosive movement. Then back problems. Robinson's spine, already under enormous pressure from carrying his extraordinary frame through years of physical combat, started sending signals that could not be ignored. Training sessions became painful. Recovery stretched on for hours after every game. There were days Robinson walked into the gym hoping to work out and walked out having barely been able to move. The 1996 to 1997 Spurs became one of the worst teams in the NBA because their best player was broken. Robinson watched from the sideline as the franchise he had carried for years fell apart without him. He did not know if he would come back the same. He did not know if the combination of a broken foot and a damaged back meant his career was effectively over. He sat with that question in private because he was not the type to broadcast his fear publicly. But people who were close to him during that period say the fear was real. He had dedicated his entire adult life to being the best at this game. And the very real possibility that injuries had taken that away from him was something no smile could fully cover. And then, in the middle of that broken season, something happened that looked like addition insult to injury. The Spurs, because they had performed so terribly, earned the first overall pick in the 1997 NBA draft. And they used it to select Tim Duncan. Duncan was everything scouts dream about. Fundamentally perfect. Impossible to rattle. A player who could dominate the low post for 15 years. He was the future of the franchise in a way that was immediate and obvious to everyone, including Robinson. Robinson understood exactly what Duncan's arrival meant. The center that San Antonio had been built around was no longer the center of San Antonio's future. This is the moment that separates David Robinson from almost every other star athlete in professional sports history. Because what Robinson did next was not normal. It was not what you expect from an MVP who has been the face of a franchise for nearly a decade. He did not resist Duncan. He did not play political games in the locker room. He did not demand the ball or protect his statistics or make the coaching staff choose between the old star and the new one. Robinson looked at this young player, who was essentially his replacement, and made a choice that most athletes in his position never make. He decided to help Duncan become great. Robinson worked with Duncan in practice. He shared what he had learned over more than a decade of facing the best centers in the world. He helped Duncan understand the culture of the Spurs, how to handle pressure, how to lead without letting it destroy you. And when the game started, Robinson accepted a different role. Not the star, the shield, the experienced veteran whose presence made everything around him more stable. The combination of Robinson and Duncan quickly became the most feared frontcourt in the NBA. They were called the Twin Towers. But what made them truly special was not their size or their talent. It was the fact that one of them had chosen to make the other one better at personal cost to himself. Think about what that took. Robinson had spent years carrying a city's hopes. He had endured playoff failures and media attacks and the suffocating pressure of being the only answer to every question the Spurs had. He had won the MVP award. He was a Hall of Fame talent. And he chose clearly and deliberately to step back, to let a younger man have the spotlight, to become a mentor when he still had plenty of star power left. That decision did not make the headlines. It did not generate highlight clips. But it was arguably the most impressive thing Robinson ever did. The 1998 to 1999 season, though shortened by a labor dispute, became the season everything changed. The Spurs had been built into something new. Not fragile. Not dependent on one man's supernatural performance. Disciplined, deep, and fearless. Robinson and Duncan formed a defensive wall that opponents could not crack. The team advanced through the playoffs with a kind of quiet confidence that felt completely different from the anxious, Robinson-or-nothing teams of previous years. When the Spurs reached the 1999 NBA Finals, they faced the New York Knicks, a team with heart and fight, but no answer for what San Antonio had built. When the final buzzer sounded and the Spurs became NBA champions, Robinson stood on the court and felt something he had never felt before in his professional career. The ring. The one the headlines said he would never get. The one the commentators had decided was beyond him because he was too nice, too gentle, too unwilling to be the kind of ruthless competitor that championships required. Robinson did not celebrate by mocking those voices. He did not point to anyone and say he told them so. He just stood there, surrounded by teammates and noise and the weight of everything he had survived to reach that moment. And then in 2003, Robinson did it again. At 37 years old, with a body that had been through 2 serious injuries, years of physical punishment, and the slow erosion that time inflicts on even the most gifted athletes, Robinson played his final NBA season as a contributor, not a star. Tim Duncan was the engine now. Robinson was the wisdom and the example. When the Spurs won the 2003 championship, completing a run that vindicated everything Robinson had sacrificed, he walked slowly around the court afterward and cried. Not the crying of relief or triumph alone. The crying of a man who had carried something very heavy for a very long time and was finally setting it down. The crowd did not sit. Every person in that arena stood and applauded as Robinson made his way around the floor one last time. Not for his championship rings. Not even for his MVP award or his All-Star selections. They stood because they understood what they had witnessed over more than a decade. A man who had every reason to become bitter, every excuse to protect his ego, every justification to resist change, and who chose none of those things. A man who served his country before himself, who mentored his successor instead of undermining him, who let faith carry him through seasons where doubt would have broken most people. After retirement, Robinson did something that should be the most surprising part of this story, but somehow feels perfectly in character. He took millions of dollars of his own money and built a school. Not as a publicity move, not as a tax strategy, as a genuine act of belief in the idea that education is the most powerful thing you can give another person. Carver Academy in San Antonio became a place where children who had no access to quality education suddenly had it. Robinson was not a distant celebrity donor. He showed up. He talked to teachers. He followed students' progress. He believed that every child, given the right opportunity, could change the trajectory of their own life. Years after his retirement, Carver Academy had sent hundreds of students to college. Robinson never made much public noise about it. He did not hold press conferences about his generosity. He just kept doing the work. Because for Robinson, greatness was never about being seen. It was about making things better. It was about doing what was right even when nobody was watching. David Robinson spent his entire career being told he was not enough. Not ruthless enough, not mentally tough enough, not the right kind of champion. The media had a narrative about him that was built almost entirely on what he was not. And Robinson's response to all of it was the same. He kept playing. He kept training. He kept serving. He kept giving. He kept leading with his character instead of his ego. And when it was over, when the last game was played and the last ring was won, what remained was not a collection of statistics or highlight clips. What remained was a reputation that no critic could touch because it had been built on something more durable than performance. It had been built on who Robinson was as a human being, day after day, year after year, in the moments nobody put on television. There are players who win because they are the best. And there are players who win because they refuse to let anything, not criticism, not injury, not the arrival of a younger star, not the quiet terror of wondering if their career is already over, break the person they decided to be. David Robinson was that second kind of player, the rarest kind. And in a world that constantly rewards ruthlessness and punishes kindness, Robinson proved something that sports rarely gets to prove. That character, real and sustained and tested character, is not a weakness. It is the most powerful force a person can carry onto any court, any challenge, any chapter of life. He wore the uniform of his country before he wore the uniform of the Spurs. He served before he starred. He mentored before he retired. And he gave back before anyone asked him to. If there is a lesson in this story beyond basketball, it is this. The world will tell you that you are too soft, too kind, too patient, too something to win the thing you are chasing. And the question is never whether the world is saying those things. The question is what you choose to do while they are saying them. David Robinson chose to keep going. He chose to stay himself. And that is why, long after the rings and the records have faded into history, his name still means something.